All right, he's back. He's back. I'm here with Loomis of the Chant It Down Radio. Are you calling it the Chant It Down Radio podcast or just keeping it with radio? How do you officially classify your show, my friend?
I call it Shannon Down Podcast these days. I mean, I started doing it as a radio show in air quotes, but I actually got to a point where I'm like, well, I knew I did a podcast, but I started out on Blog Talk Radio. And
Hmm.
so all my friends in alternative media were doing what they called internet radio, but they became podcasts. So I just decided eventually, I'm like, wait, I have a podcast. I'm just calling it Chant It Down Podcast, but either one is fine because the website is still chantitdownradio.com.
Nice, man. Well, it's absolute honor to have you back on here, Loomis. And
Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
of course, man, people who didn't catch our first episode, which was almost a year ago, back in 2022, it's really fun. It's called Egypt Enigmas and some other E alliteration. I'm just kind of remembering it now, but I had an awesome time talking to you, and I want to ask you, since we just brought it up, what year exactly did you start Chant It Down Radio? And then, obviously it's become Chant It Down Podcast, but I want to ask you first about the year. Let's see if we can dig into that really quick.
2013.
2013. Okay, that is the year I graduated high school. I remember talking about this recently. In 2013 was very blurry and fuzzy for me because I was trying to let go of all these memories of 2012 in the December of 2012 at Sandy Hook. Just all the craziness around me.
Were you there at that school?
I was a mile away, yeah, and I
Oh, okay.
keep
Okay.
on bringing this up on podcast just to let people know like that was kind of like a very defining moment for me, even though like I wasn't there. But just
Mhm.
being nearby that, I feel like when you're nearby an event of any kind, there's just a lot of contagious energy. So that's interesting. But what do you remember in 2013 when you got going and you started like were you doing like a solo cast, like a solo radio show in the beginning, or were you having on guests? How did it all begin for you, and what kind of topics were you really focused on back in 2013?
Well, because in 20 because before that I was doing activism. I was doing a lot of uh public speaking in some spots, movie showings for other uh alternative platforms such as the movie What in the World Are They Spraying, which is
Mm.
a documentary that was made about 2010, and I hooked up with the creator. His name was Michael Murphy. He passed away, but I hosted his movie out here as and I emceed the show and then brought him on and stuff. But the that was like little ways of me getting out my all this information that was built up on me, but it wasn't enough. So what I did finally in 2013, when a little more time in my life started to open up, is I did this show and or my show, and it I can't really remember exactly what was going on, but what I had in mind is everything. I wanted to do solo stuff. I wanted to have guests. And actually, if you listen to the beginning episodes, I had some of my crazy friends on, a couple of them that it was kind of like the three of us were sort of like they were kind of like my co-hosts, but and we had fun and we chanted it down. In other words, we chant down the system and the lies and all that, and we had fun with it. And I thought maybe that was the format of the show, but then these guys weren't really reliable, and I had a focus beyond that. So I ended up just doing whatever I could. I sort of just did it guerrilla style where I had, if I could get on a guest, great. If I couldn't get on a guest, I'll do a show by myself because I had plenty of stuff to share too. So it kind of went like that. I don't really remember events in the world happening exactly in 2013. It seemed like a quieter
Mm.
year.
It's a totally different world.
Yeah, it's a different world ago, and that's 10 years ago now, which
Mm.
is insane to me because life goes by so fast that before you know, like I know old school podcasters and true speakers that I would call old school, and I'm not old school compared to them, but now I'm in that category, I guess.
Mm.
And I'm like, where did all that time go? I have no idea. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I want to wish the absolute best to the Mr. Murphy, right? The filmmaker that you connected with, to his family and the work that he left behind. I haven't seen that film. I'd be interested in checking it out, because, perfect segue. I want to ask you about the sky and something in particular. If anyone checks out Loomis's show, they'll see an episode. It's all about the cobalt blue sky, and I'm curious, before we get into chemtrails, or I asked one of my coworkers because we had a fire drill today and we were outside looking up and I saw one and I was like, hey, what's that? Kind of just see how she would react. And she's like, oh, it's just, a jet airliner like left that behind. Like, it was like the typical response. And I didn't say anything. I was like, I'm not gonna go down this rabbit hole here and now. The time and place isn't quite right. But I
Sure.
want to ask you, before we get into the topic, maybe I'm curious about one thing in particular. I know for a fact that people um have figured out ways to do something about it, because I think in a lot of ways, when you look up at something happening in the sky, thousands of feet up in the air, you might feel a bit like disempowered, like, well, like what am I going to do about it? And I know someone like Mitch, the orgone donor, he's been doing
Yeah.
work to basically fight back, I guess. And so I'm curious, do you or have you felt disempowered by just looking up and seeing chemtrails and feeling that same way? Because I feel like until I found Mitch through Mark Steves, my family thinks I'm crazy. Shout out.
Hmm.
I didn't realize that there were things that people could do against this. So maybe now is a good time if you want to get into like what is going on up there, and then we can kind of segue into like what can we do about it? Because I think that's something that when most normal, I don't want to say normies, but I'm going to say when normies hear about chemtrails, they're like, oh, well, big deal, like nothing I can do about it. But maybe I'm wrong. What do you think?
Well, yeah. Well, to go back onto what you said about does it make me feel like powerless and stuff? And no, it never did. It made me feel empowered
Nice.
because the first time I saw a chemtrail was in 1998. The first time I recognized they were doing it, and they actually have been doing it. Just to go back for the listeners, probably around 1996 or 7 is when they started to deploy this stuff full scale, roughly. And for me, seeing it in 1998, I didn't yet know the truth on things till the year following 1999, but I knew there was something wrong and I started pointing it out. I just knew intuitively that's not right. That's not what should happen with the jet trail. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So what I did is I felt like, wow, I know something that most people don't. And that's the kind of feeling that helped me feel inspired to tell everybody else. So no, I never felt powerless against it, but it is a dark topic. And I guess maybe to preface this to the audience, I my job on this planet is to show people that there is a greater, more interesting world outside the system.
Right
And
on.
my job is to show you and everyone how amazing and profound the world really is, whether it's through exposing dark agendas so we can understand our position in the world and rise out of that illusion, or show people that there is a loving spirit in the universe that leads and guides us if you let it. And it's all about the good, bad, and the ugly in our world, and we have to embrace the whole thing. And I'm here to show people that there's a world much greater and more mind-blowing than going to work every day, driving in traffic, coming home, watching TV, doing errands and chores. And my job, I feel like, is to break that bubble for people. And looking at all these dark agendas is also a spiritual path if you don't get stuck just being in the dark. So
Exactly.
that, just wanted to give that to anybody listening that maybe this is their first time hearing about chemtrails, or just not knowing enough about it, because it does get really dark and it is all encompassing and it's pretty heavy. But I guess it's better that people know that we're all in this together, experiencing this, and we all chose to be here, even if we didn't realize that we did. I think we did. So
I love that, man. That is amazing energy to bring forward on, like you said, a pretty dark topic. And I appreciate that because, I found that I always gravitate towards people who are willing to look at the darkness directly, and yet they still come away with it, knowing for a fact, not just believing, but knowing that there's a true light within everything, everyone, and this place as a whole. And that's amazing. And that's a great reminder. So I appreciate you saying that. And I'm curious, when did you start to like speak about it? Because seeing them up in the sky and then realizing like, all right, something going on here. You had said like you were seeing something that perhaps others weren't really paying any attention to, which could be kind of isolating in the beginning. But how did you get
Sure.
connected to others in the community? How did you begin to even do your own research and develop your own presentation on this very topic?
Well, I guess it kind of goes into a longer story. If you don't mind, I'll try
Yeah,
to
of
give it
course.
shortly. But I probably told it maybe on my first show with you, but it's okay because you probably have new listeners and stuff. 1999, I was living on the Big Island, and I totally dropped out of the life here on Oahu. If for those who don't know Hawaii, Oahu is our main island. We have over 1 million people on this island. I left this island to do more of a different life. My friend got a place with his girlfriend, and it just seemed like the right thing to do. My living situation was falling apart, and I decided, you know what? I don't like what people are into. I'm leaving. So I went on a limb, and I ended up becoming broke, and I ended up just taking the couch. So there was this room that was a revolving door in this apartment that was for rent that I just couldn't afford. But they were nice enough to let me sleep on the couch. So there was a several different people that had like took a month here and there and stayed there and then left because they didn't need it or whatever the case. And finally we got a guy who was much older than us. Now I'm going to say I was probably about 20 years old. Yeah, I was 20 years old. And what he was, this guy was like 45, 50, and he was staying with us because he was building a house for his family, and he was from the mainland, but he was kind of getting away from his situation. And as time went on, he informed me that he was a high up in the USDA, and this guy was, giving me tidbits of truth here and there until finally one night I sat down and he just really broke down because he knew I was a bit receptive. That it broke down to just me how the world really works, and it was pretty jaw dropping to hear, all the different components of what you would call the conspiracy research community dropped into my head in basically one night. But it all kind of jived with me, and because it did, I did my own research. He left me with two books to read. One was Behold a Pale Horse by William Cooper, and another one was The Committee of 300 by Dr. John Coleman. And when I went into that research, I realized it was all like real, but the thing that he told me in 2000 or 1999, the one thing I really remember him saying is they want George W. Bush in, and they want to do something big. You watch, something big's going to happen. You watch. He said that stuck with me the whole time. Well, I was 20 years old. I was still partying a lot and not really taking life so seriously. But then 9/11 happened in 2001. And that was that big thing that he was talking about. So it all came together. And I was like, wow, I know a lot of things that most people don't know. I started to realize. And because of that, I was on fire to speak the truth. At the time, nobody really knew exactly what had happened that day, but we did know it wasn't right. And as time went on and revealed that these things weren't right, so I began speaking my truth, my true truth, around that time period where I realized that I had to tell people about this, whether it was chemtrails, whether it was 9/11, or any component that there's bad stuff in our food or whatever. I was determined to tell people all about this stuff.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you brought up this, it's like the hero's journey cycle. It's okay to look at the dark, evil things that are being done to us, as long as you're willing to complete the cycle and then figure out what action am I going to take that's going to make this better. And it's like, yeah, learned about the poison in the food, poison in the water, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And if you just stop there, it's like, all right, well, this is not going to help. You're just being poisoned. Where's the antidote? So it's
Yeah.
interesting that you've been speaking on this in that solution oriented way. And there's even something, oh God, if this gets me kicked off of YouTube, so be it. But if we're talking about poison, you also mentioned a really cool episode that you did before we hit record about
Oh,
basically people who are unjabbed who want to go on a dating app and meet
oh,
each other.
poison darts. Poison
Poison
darts.
darts, yes,
Yeah. Okay.
precisely.
Yeah.
Yes. And I'm curious, I got the episode pulled up here so I can let people know if they go back to the Chant It Down podcast, episode 197 with Shelby Thompson, the unjected dating app. And I love your opening tagline. It's like, ever wanted to meet someone in the dating world without having to worry about their viewpoints on the truth? It's like, wow, okay. What were some of your takeaways from that? Because that's a very solution oriented approach to one of the biggest, probably one of the most nefarious psyops that we've seen so far.
Hmm. Well, my takeaways was that I only had wished when I was dating in those days that I was just telling you about that I knew somebody and had that option in technology to be able to find people alike instead trying to wake up, dating girls that were completely asleep and or just, I mean, it was even harder to wake people up back then than now because things were less in your face. So, that would have been great to have back then, but I kind of just, I just had a very loose, fun conversation with Shelby. She actually lives on Maui next door to me
Nice.
here, and I think that there's a lot of people that don't want to mix with people that have had that poison shot because there is a lot of ingredients that may actually spread to the other person. It's possible. I don't know for sure, but
Like shedding might be possible. We're still
shedding,
unclear. Yeah.
we're sure we're unclear on that. Humanity has become uh a petri dish basically for these people, and so we don't really know the full outcomes. I have done 2 episodes on the effects of that of more recent times that if someone wants to get into, it's dark, and I'm not going to lie that it's not. That's one that I don't have much solutions to other than unless you didn't get it, but like we may see a lot of people perish from taking these, and I hate to say it, but it's starting to become reality. And so as we see people die suddenly, and but anyway, back on that episode, it was just a good way to know that hey, there's a lot of people out there that also don't think of this. So if you're in the dating world, or even if you don't just want to date someone, if you just want to meet more like
Yeah.
minds,
Yeah.
I thought that that was a great little thing to have because like I said, I wish I would have had that in my day when I was doing the more
What a time to be alive, my
beginning
friend.
open
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
beginning openings of all this for me. But yeah, yeah,
Right
that
on,
was
man. Well, I mean, that kind of goes back to why this community is so sacred. Yes, I said it. It's a sacred community because we've all been able to commune around these ideas. And it's not like we all have the same point of view and we all agree. It's like not just one giant echo tunnel. But, every time I speak with someone who is a podcaster or just someone who listens to a lot of the, I don't know, like alternative media type podcasts,
Mhm.
I just find that people who are willing to think flexibly are fun to chat with. So I mean that's why we're back here together, my friend. And I want
Yeah.
to ask you in particular, when you look back on 2022 and you look ahead to we're just in the middle of February now and we're approaching well, I think we could say that things in Europe are getting kind of spicy and concerning. And, there's a lot that could happen. I won't speculate too much, but I'm curious, in your personal journey as a researcher, as a spiritual seeker and all that, um, what kinds of plans do you want to make for yourself on the island? I find that I'm really fascinated in maybe a different approach to the day-to-day lifestyle that maybe some people on the Hawaiian Islands have. And I'm just speaking as an outsider. I've never been, never really I've never really been able to ask someone, be like, hey, what is it like living there? And I'm curious as far as a routine, as far as a rabbit hole that you want to dive into. What kinds of things do you want to set as an intention, basically, for the rest of 2023 or for the rest of February, however far you want to go?
Mm. Well, as far as like with this podcast or just in general in life, or
Yeah, both. Yeah.
yeah, well, I mean, first I should say living in Hawaii is a good thing most of the time. It's very expensive here. Like there's pros and cons about everywhere.
Mhm.
I don't enjoy, like, since COVID, a lot of the viewpoints here. Like I'm pretty surrounded by people with different viewpoints about especially the topic of poison darts and other things. Hawaii took it hook, line, and sinker really bad, unfortunately. So it has changed my opinion on Hawaii, and I'm very disappointed in Hawaii. So I'm actually not as loving it as I used to, but I
Mm.
still love the environment here. Hawaii's home. It has we have all kinds of climates on these little islands, and and then there's a lot you can do all outside year round. So we have a year round lifestyle. So I enjoy that. Is it permanent home for me? Maybe, maybe not. I live on an island with 1.5 million people. It's crowded, it's small. So maybe somewhere else sometime, but for now it works. But as far as my plan to take my own podcast, I plan to take it to the very height it can reach this year. And for many years it was that thing I do, like a hobby that stays
Mm.
in the closet. In fact, it still kind of is. It satisfied myself. It was therapy for me as well as helping others.
Right.
A lot of people say to me, how come I never heard of you till now, kind of thing. And a lot of it is that I wasn't networking with people like
Mm.
yourself, and I wasn't doing social media. I wasn't even putting my shows on YouTube really, and I really didn't know what I was doing. I went down this road completely solo, no one to give me advice or tech advice specifically, no mentorship, just record, upload. And I'm not that tech savvy, but I do have my recording experience as a musician, so I sort of put that in there. And for a long
Perfect.
time I was just sort of stagnant, and then my podcast was this thing I do when I'm not working a full-time job, taking care of my kids and giving my energy other places. And nor was I showing my face. And the reason why I was not showing my face, I thought it was be safer being anonymous because of the level of information I was giving out. But anyway, I want my podcast to go all the way this year, whatever that means. I know there's no good money in this, and I'm not looking to make a living necessarily, but I know I have the ingredients to give a great show for anyone who wants to tune in. And I know that I don't know what bar to shoot for exactly, but I think I'm going on a good path. And again, I do this because I do this because it's the right thing to do. I
Yes.
have enough information that it's not a popularity contest, but it's the right thing to do. So I feel great doing it. But yeah, I hope to take this thing farther this year. I've been doing more live streams, as you saw the what happened to Cobalt Blue Skies.
Mhm.
I'll be doing more presentations like that, and I'm planning on having it a call-in show when I do live streams too.
Nice,
I'm
nice.
trying to figure that out. Kind of bring back the old radio part of it too,
Right,
so it
right.
can kind of like have more listener involvement and stuff.
You ever
But
tune into the Interverse podcast, Chance?
yeah, I know Chance. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
awesome. That kind of radio show he does on Wednesdays. It's called Vibrant, and you get like
Mm-hmm.
an opportunity have people send messages to the Telegram group, and then you can play them through your streaming, and that's a lot of fun. And I'm looking forward to that, man. You're an awesome host, and you're an awesome
Oh, thank you.
guest too. I was looking back, people really enjoyed our first chat, and I think one reason in particular was because you told some really cool stories about Egypt, and I'm curious, in the same spirit of the previous question, and also, I think you had mentioned a documentary. Maybe we'll get to that in a second.
Sure, sure.
Are there any other travel plans? Because you had gone to Egypt. Is there anything that you're, planning to dive into as far as a study, rabbit hole, travels, anything like that you've got planned out?
Yeah, well, I do love to travel, and it was really a bummer during the COVID times that I could not. And then the world's, been slowly opening up. So
Mm.
Egypt was one of those travels. And you mentioned the documentary. Well, I did a lot of footage in Egypt, and I went there thinking I'm gonna make a documentary, and then so I have all this footage, and then I realized it's bigger than Egypt. I can't
Mm.
just do Egypt. So I have been lucky to travel to places like Machu Picchu, and a few other megalithic sites in the world, and Sacsayhuaman, and a few other places that are just mind blowing. Well, I went. I don't. Well, yeah, I wouldn't have talked to you. October, I went to England, so I saw Stonehenge and
Nice.
Avesbury Henge. And as I got footage of those, I'm realizing, okay, I don't want to just make a documentary on what everybody already knows and what you've already heard. And so that means that I'm going to have to kind of let it dictate itself. Sometimes creativity comes when you're doing it, and then you get more ideas. And so when I started it, I was realizing, oh, whoa, this is bigger than just Egypt. And I'm not exactly sure the direction it needs to go, but it is something that's going to happen. I need to get Final Cut Pro, because doing it on iMovie, it can be done, but why not make it better than just that? So that's where I'm at with that. But my travel plans do continue. um I don't have anywhere booked at the moment, but it's possible that I might actually go to the Mexican pyramids in this coming December, but we'll see. We'll see.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, man. That's
Yeah.
exciting, dude. Yeah,
Yeah.
the fact of the influence of our personal muse is really interesting because you start off with one idea and then you flow into something else. You're being given new directions spontaneously, and you had an
Hmm.
idea in the beginning, but you were flexible, and maybe I would say it's for the best that you held off and continued working at it. And I'm really excited to see the final product.
Thank you.
And I'll shamelessly plug, man. I love video editing, so if you need help with that, let me know. I'd be happy to work with you.
Sure.
But and I would love to, talk to you about the Mexican pyramids as well because Graham Hancock did a really cool series, Ancient Apocalypse, on
Right.
Netflix. It was no surprise that it was like one of the number one shows, and I'm curious on the Mexican pyramids. Um, if someone were to ask you, like, why are you going? What are you looking for? I feel like there might be confusion about the history of the pyramids, which might be an obvious statement, right? Like, um, this would be, excuse my ignorance, this would be like an Aztec creation as far as we were told.
Yes, and Mayans both
Aztec and
made
Mayan, like a
pyramids. Yeah. Uh-huh.
collaboration.
Yeah, different civilizations. I think in southern Mexico you have the Mayans, and then the Aztecs, I believe, made the ones outside Mexico City.
I see. I should have clarified
Teotihuacan.
which ones you were
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about.
Well,
Yeah,
I want to do both, but I'm being too greedy because Mexico's big, and you can't always cram all that inside of one
Hmm.
vacation. I'm realizing.
Right. Man, I
Yeah.
have to take a couple trips. Well,
Yeah.
that's exciting,
Exactly.
man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Going into it, whichever pyramid you wish to discuss, going into this trip, just in an idealistic way, what is your understanding maybe of function, and spiritual connection to these structures, just like we had discussed from Egypt, and maybe even the wider implications about a global civilization. That's all very exciting to me, and I think that's exactly why people like yourself would want to go visit pyramids and see them face to face because these questions about our origins are staggering and very very exciting. So, what do you think about your mindset and maybe your beliefs going into this study?
Well, I think there's something to say about experiencing a place than just seeing it on a video. And that's part of it for me. Also, I want to get footage to continue this documentary idea. The pyramids themselves, I think, it's a worldwide thing that happened. It may have been a worldwide culture that put them in place, much older than, you know, than academics suggest. And one of the things I've noticed about all these sites that I've been to, like whether it was the Giza Plateau or Machu Picchu or Sacsayhuaman, all these places, I tried to take in their energy, and there was a lot of people there, so that didn't help. But I felt like they were turned off. I felt like they had a function, but it's been turned off. So what this function was, we'll not exactly know. I'm going to go on in a theory. This is very fringe and out there, but I had a good friend on the well, we did a swap cast, Triffin from Unlocking the Code, and we've done about 3 or 4 swap casts to talk about megalithic sites. And the last one we did was about the moon. And I have a theory that the Earth was straight up and down on its axis. And there are cultures that have memory before the moon came here. There's the Greeks, there's the before the Greeks were the Greeks, okay, and then there was the Zulu tribes. They had legends about the moon before, and even in Bolivia, this site Pumapunku, well, not next to it is Tiwanaku. There is suggestions that there was a time before the moon happened. So I'm wondering if these sites were activated, and when the moon came in, it knocked the Earth into a 23-degree axis that we now are in, created a huge cataclysm. There may have been more than one flood. There's suggestions of that turned these things off. And it's possible that that happened. Another place you can make this assumption is in Karnak in Egypt, where I went to, where the central avenue is pointed to the old direction of the Earth being stood straight up on its axis rather than 23 degrees. So although what I'm saying is all conjecture, I don't know, but I feel like these sites had a purpose when they were turned on, and their energy is not, and they were for form and function rather than for putting like the sarcophagus is in Egypt or something. No, when you go inside the Great Pyramid, actually I didn't go in the Great Pyramid, I went in the Middle Pyramid, but you go in there, there's no writings on the wall. It feels like it was more like machine-like. It was for some kind of function. So what? I don't know. Some people say batteries. Some people say energy devices. Maybe. I don't know. And I like to say that I don't know because I don't know. And I don't want to act like I do. But
there's some fun
at the
in
same
that too.
time,
Yeah.
there's fun in that, right? But there is something to say about our ancient past. And we all know there's a lot more than we've been told. And that's why Graham Hancock's series is so popular. That's why Ancient Aliens is so popular, because a lot of people, they want answers to all these crazy places on this Earth. And I think the Earth might have even been inhabited by a different type of human in those days. I mean, as it says in the Bible, as it says in as we found the elongated skulls, and the Sumerian tablets and all that. I mean, yes, history has been tampered with and all, but there's this evidence. There's a mountain that we can sift through, and it does show us a picture that academia is not showing us. So that's all we know, is we know puzzle pieces, but it's interesting, very interesting.
I love that, man. You've reminded me. Was just thinking about the tinfoil hat show with Sam Tripoli, and whenever hidden history is brought up, his reaction, which I really love, I really respect this, is that he's saying the idea that like we are way more special than we were taught, and it's discovering that and finding these puzzle pieces is so amazing, because our any materialist reductionist ideas that create a kind of like cold and sterile world are totally obliterated, because our history and our identity at our core is greatly expanded from this type of thinking. And I want to give another shout out to Micah Dank, my friend, the author of Into the Rabbit Hole series. He had a cool story about the capstones on the pyramids, and basically the capstones, just to add to the fringe ideas, when the capstones were put back into place, basically, so we've heard all sorts of ideas about how the pyramids were used, like chemical factory and this and that, spiritual vehicle. In his story, not to give a spoiler, this is just maybe a plug for his books. He's got a new book coming out. The capstones inserted back into the pyramids allowed them to transmit a message to other star systems, like in particular the Seven Sisters, the Pleiadians, or the Pleiades. And that's fun to think about. At the same time, though, I've become more and more skeptical about nuts and bolts UFOs and this and that. I think there's a very strange phenomenon happening with disclosure, and even since 2020, we've seen a weird, you could say like a peculiar action taken by the government, even world governments, slowly bringing out changing UFO to UAP and this and that. But I'm curious where you stand spiritually on this matter, because whether or not we have proof, and I mean, I've seen stuff in the sky, I've seen stuff in my sleep paralysis experiences, becoming conscious in a lucid state, but that doesn't mean I have proof. But I still have a spiritual belief that when people say we're not alone, maybe we're not referring to like little green men that fly in little discs, but maybe more of like a spiritual companion. And I'm curious how you stand, or how you would describe this to someone who was curious about UFOs but didn't want to lead them astray into something that was a dead end. What would you say?
Well, I would say first of all, that there's a lot of disinfo in the
Mm,
UFO ET phenomena, whatever you want. Well, people call exopolitics.
yeah.
And there's different strands of BS that I think is very important before you get into it to really lay aside. And that means there's several different narratives that have been put out there that we I feel like could be wrong. Being that I came through the door as a conspiracy researcher, I look at it like, okay, I think that our governments did work with advanced beings of some sort to get the technology that they did. So I do come from that corner. I did have on Laura Eisenhower, who is the great granddaughter of
Yes.
President Eisenhower in the
Mhm.
United States, and she has her. I mean, more people know about her grandfather's story than her, actually, it seems. But basically, he did have a meeting supposedly with these beings. So I like to make sure here's a problem in the conspiracy research community, or whatever you want to call it, is that there's a lot of people that don't go UFO. And then there's a lot of people in the UFO community that don't go into the conspiracies, but it's all
Mm,
connected into one big world. And I like to always say that. And I don't feel like people should be ashamed to talk about any of it, because it all is part of, I think, our history.
yes.
And I think probably this is my looking at ancient history, putting it together with present, is that we live in a populated universe,
Mm,
and that we've had all kinds of beings. We've had different hybrids on the planet. We've had all kinds of evidence. I mean, again, the elongated skulls, the different Sumerian tablets talking about, the gods, the Anunnaki, whether you Zachariah Sitchin's interpretation or not, I get mixed bag. That's a mixed bag, but you got to be careful too, though. So, but we kind of just, I look at the real evidence, and then I start listening to some ridiculous stories. I take those out. I like a lot of these 20 and back guys. I'm just not convinced on that. I need more info.
mhm.
So I come as a researcher with skepticism. So when I cover this on my own show, I have a mini series called the Beyond Earth series, where we incorporate all this, but with a skeptical mind, not just believing what people say. So when I tell someone to take this all in, also I don't think that it's going to hurt their spiritual life. Let's say you're Christian, Muslim, Jewish. It's not going to hurt your connection with God, or whatever you connect with. It just shows that there's a larger world than we really know, and we've been, I hate to say this word, quarantined off from the rest of this world, because I believe they wanted this planet, they wanted humans just to take it where they can go without the interference of other beings. And Perhaps I'm wrong on some of this, but from what I know, I think that there really is. I've seen a ton of UFOs. In fact, in the last year, I've seen a whole lot of UFOs. And I watch the skies. I bought gravity chairs, the ones that go all the way
Oh,
back.
nice. Yeah.
And when there's a clear night, I watch the skies and I see all kinds of anomalies that couldn't be satellites, that are just, so there's stuff going on up there. And I did a show on the secret space program. So again, I come with a skeptical mind, but there's no doubt in my mind there is greater, bigger, crazier things going on up there than we're being told, for sure.
Awesome, man. I appreciate your healthy skepticism. And yeah, man, the metaphor that I've kind of created, the imagery that I thought of, because that's kind of what I do. You've given me the idea that, when we're looking at this topic or any of these topics that we brought up tonight, there's always like muddy water. And you're digging for gold and you have to go through the muddy water, and then you pick up on the piece of gold, which is the value of this speculation, this line of questioning, is really to remind us of how amazing this place is and how cool it is that we are here to experience it. And I've
Yeah.
never been more excited to learn. And I feel like whenever someone questions me, like, Jake, you got to stop talking about conspiracies. Like, if you're not going to get a job doing that and this and that, and like, just like you said, I'm not planning to make money uh speaking about conspiracies, but really, like, if anyone were to listen and get something out of any of the content that we put out, it's really like to foster a love for learning. So, with that being said, I'm excited for your trip to Mexico, because I think that's a great experience. Going face to face with, having your hands-on experience, I think is really, really wonderful. And I'm inspired myself. I've heard stories about Texas now that I'm down here. Last time I spoke to you, I was up in Connecticut. In
Right.
Texas, I've heard that whether it's mounds or other structures, canals, and even supposedly, allegedly, I just started looking into this, but allegedly pyramids. Not to mention, Memphis, Tennessee, a couple hours away, has the Bass Pro Shop. That's got a conveniently hilarious cover story. But I've heard that in Texas in particular, perhaps around the area of Austin, there are supposedly the oldest structures in the country. And I don't know if it's true. I would have to go and research it for myself, but I have to give a shout out to Mark Steves once again for the Esoteric America podcast. He had Emily Moyer on, and she really had
Oh yeah.
a ton of information about Austin and the Gateway experience and all of this. So I'm excited to learn more about that. And as far as your show goes, and going back to what you've got planned in the future, can you tell us about some of the shows you've got planned, some of the guests that you might be bringing on, and even some of the solo content that you're planning to produce in the near future?
Well, it's kind of hard for me to, like, I don't plan my podcast too far in
The
advance.
spontaneous
Yeah, a
unfold,
lot of it
yes.
is. I mean, March, for some reason, it's not even like I planned this. Just like January,
Hmm,
March sort of has a theme to it, and that is
nice.
that I am going to have Barbara Lamb, who is a regressionist, a hypnotic
Ooh,
regressionist, and she goes into abductees and talks about their experiences. And she's a pretty big name out there, so I'm happy to have her, and I may have somebody else on with with an actual experiencer as well. Um, and Also, I'm gonna have well, like I said, January wasn't meant to be a theme, but if you want, I'm taking February off. This is kind of a hiatus month. I'm just taking a
nice.
break from
It's
my
good.
own stuff, just for because podcasting started to take up a lot of my life. But
Hmm.
January, I had on Alana Freeland, and she gets into the uh, frequencies that we're dealing with, a lot of crazy stuff with the 5G, with chemtrails. If you want to get into the real nitty gritty detail, you want to listen to her. But that happened to be the same month I was doing my presentation about chemtrails, what happened to cobalt blue skies. I didn't plan it that way, but that's how it happened. And so it's funny how different months have different themes to them. And I so But that I'm planning on, like I mentioned, doing call-in shows with guests when I do a live stream. I want to try to do a live stream once a month. And June, I want to do something big for my 10th anniversary show, but I don't know
Nice.
what yet. See, so I don't really have things planned out that much in advance. I just kind of go with where my gut goes, and I go,
Right
well,
on, man.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, as far as March goes, I've never experienced the traditional form of any hip hypnosis or a regression. I
Mhm.
have done like deep meditation, but that's like a maybe a much different experience. And I'm curious if you've ever had an experience like that, or consulted with someone who was able to guide you through that kind of experience.
No, I never have.
Mm.
I have experienced seeing a UFO really close once, and I'm wondering about that time. And I'm thinking like, well, that would be interesting to get regression on that. But I don't know if anything happened there. But that, and that coincides again with the time period I talked about around the year 2000, when I was just starting to speak all this truth. It's like everything started hitting me left and right.
Mm.
But that was a big experience, and I can tell you about that if you want. I mean, I can go any direction, but like that really woke me up to this aspect of it. That's why I do cover UFOs and stuff, because I think it's really a part of this whole equation. Um, but I would like to get regression on that to know myself if I had that more to that experience than just seeing it close up.
Yeah. Do you feel like regression has a relationship to remote viewing in any way?
Hmm. Um, no, I don't know. I think remote viewing would be somebody in a room getting something to draw with or write with, and that doesn't
Mhm.
know what they're talking about. Where regression would be going into your own mind, and
Gotcha. Yeah.
I don't think they're of the same. Um, yeah, I don't think so. No.
Yeah, I bring it up because it's interesting. When I think about regression, I think about maybe not like the modernized pop new age idea of like, someone offering this service. It's more, it kind of reminds me of like an ancient shamanic practice, or like a method where people who are, typically, maybe I'll just speculate, like typically people who are carrying around a really heavy trauma feel like they need to go back and reprocess it or to review it. But it's interesting in your case, if I saw a UFO, I would definitely want to try to go back and clarify what I saw. So that'd be really interesting. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that, and really looking forward to the episodes, man. We're coming up on about an hour, and I want to ask you as a closing question, and this is not something I really prepared to ask you, but I think, in the spirit of spontaneity, I'm gonna let the muse guide me. So for you personally, if you were to gently and carefully and deliberately help one of your normie friends wake up, where would you start?
Um, I might start with corporate logos or chemtrails. Both are areas in which you can bring people through the gateway to wake them up. Corporate logos are in our face, and they have a meaning. They come from ancient magic, and to describe to people that dark magicians are running this world sounds a little crazy, but I think, like, for example, I met a girl a while back that worked at this place, and I ended up not, I mean, it wasn't like I just brought this out of the blue, but I ended up telling her about the logo on the Starbucks coffee she was
Oh, that's a
drinking.
fun one.
Yeah, and so then when I broke it down to her, then I hadn't seen her in a while, and I came back about a week later, and she goes, "Yeah, I stopped drinking Starbucks coffee." And so I'm like, "Oh, hey, I'm getting somewhere." I mean, but corporate logos, a good person to get into this with, and I have to give respect where it's due, is Freeman Fly, who's been around since the early 2000s. He made a video that went viral, like an old YouTube video probably 2004 or 5, that was breaking down all the corporate logos and where they are Freemasonic symbolism and stuff. And it wakes you up to a larger world to realize that the people that run our society and the institutions of our society are involved in this. And so that's one path. But the truth is, you have to fill somebody out. You have to go and you have to understand who they are and where to meet them at, because maybe that doesn't work for somebody else. So you have to find something that does work for somebody. Like you tried to point out a chemtrail to someone earlier, and maybe it didn't work, or maybe it wasn't quite the time for it. But if you plant seeds, sometimes all it takes, I talked about on the presentation what happened to Cobalt Blue Skies, and anybody should check that out. It's on my Odyssey channel. Actually, somehow it stayed on my YouTube channel.
Nice.
Well, I have no idea how, but anyway, I said it only takes about maybe 5 to 10 minutes for someone to see that that's not a jet trail and it's making clouds in their sky. They just have to have the care to look and watch it happen and realize. So that's one way to wake somebody up too. There's many ways to wake people up, and sometimes it's just showing them something that's out of their bubble. Like I mentioned at the beginning, my job is, I feel like at this point, is to break people out of their bubble, to show them something dark, light, beautiful, whatever, that is not in their normal path, that may plant some seeds. And some people are resistant, just like hard soil that won't take a seed. And some people are better fertile ground, and they will take it over time. And some people, they're just right there. And the moment you tell them, just like when someone showed me my first chemtrail, I knew something was wrong. You never know who you're going to wake up. And that's where the solutions come in. I mean, I know time is not on our side. I don't think, with a lot of this stuff, I don't feel like people are waking up fast enough, quick enough, and taking the action that needs to be taken. But the thing is if we were allowed to give people time, they would be able to see this happen and be able to start to we would get more people that were experts in different fields that would come up with solutions that we don't have at the moment. We need to wake up more people that would be able to create solutions if they only knew. So that's kind of where I even said at the end of that what happened to Cobalt Blue Skies is, yes, I don't have all these solutions, but the more people that know about it, the more people will be able to come up with things, like scientists and climatologists and people that can get involved that would if they knew about it. Yeah.
I love that, man. Yeah, that's a brilliant point, to be honest, because it's speaking to the fact that, inspiration can lead to great, great things. And if you plant seeds, you never know what's going to sprout. And I feel like you're absolutely correct in the fact that you have to feel someone out and, do it from a place of love, but also, be gentle, and just know that anytime someone's paradigm is shattered, it is, and this word is so overused, but I think it's fitting. It's traumatic when your worldview is shattered. So we have to be empathetic about that, because our worldviews were already shattered. So, let the poor soul go through it at their own pace. But yes, I agree. A sense of urgency is definitely needed here. So I appreciate you, Loomis. I want to ask you one more time where people can find the podcast, Chant It Down podcast. Where do you usually post? Is it only on Odyssey and YouTube? Where else can people find you?
Mainly any podcast player out there, and that's where I put my main focus, is in audio. But like I say, I'll probably be doing a live stream once a month soon enough, so that can be posted on places like Odyssey. I'm on Rumble, Odyssey, 3Speak, YouTube. My YouTube channel is called Truth Filled Trajectory, and that's where I was going to make a kind of a walk around and drive around video kind of thing called Truth Filled Trajectory. You can see some of those that I did, but I just realized I don't have time to do that. So I focus on my podcast. So there's that. And, you can find me there. As far as social networking, I'm on Instagram, which that's where we found each other. And I do have a Telegram channel with And I'd like to get my Telegram with lots of followers and chat on it. So come on over to Telegram, because that I got like 14 followers on there, something like that. It's just real quiet on there. And but
Let me post that
Instagram,
right now. I've got my Telegram group open. I want to post the link to your group. So
oh, thank
if you
you.
can remind
Yeah,
people, and they could pull out their phone or their laptop and do the same. So it'd be t.me/
chant
chant
it
it
down,
down. Let's
chat.
see.
I made it
Chant
chant it
it
down, chat.
down chat.
Yep.
Awesome. Let me see. Just gonna pull it up really quick because yeah, I mean Telegram is amazing. It's like putting all the best sides of social media into one place. It's nice to have a central hub, and that's where I've been able to contact so many, like not only just people doing podcasts, but just the community itself, who would share ideas. So yeah, there it is, folks. T.me/chant it down chat. Come say hello
Yep.
to Loomis. I'm in there. I'll see your memes if you drop them. And I want to thank you one more time, my friend. I can't believe it's almost been a full year since we've spoken, but I
Yep.
hope that this month of rest is going well. I appreciate you coming on during this restful time, and I'm looking forward to seeing everything that's coming up for you, man. And many thanks to you, my friend.
Hey, thank you for having me on again, Jake. And I'm happy to work with you anytime. And I might be doing some big things this year with group shows. So if I do
Nice.
have a roundtable, I'll get you on.
I would love
I
that,
want to
man.
do more of that stuff too. I really love networking with people. I worked
Mm.
solo for so long. Now it's time to, do that, because I don't know. Last year worked out really well with that. I'm just going to keep on going on that path.
Right on, man. It's a season of Aquarius, so let's
Right on.
network for sure.
Okay.
Appreciate you,
All right.
brother. Talk to you
All
soon.
right. Thank you.